All right, so have you guys heard about the latest humble brag? According to the Wall Street Journal.
I'm going to tell you right now, no.
I thought for a minute there he was going to say, I'm going on a cruise.
The Wall Street Journal says the new power move for A-listers and executives. Does anybody answer to that here? Dani Sureck, Darren Urban, Paul Podcast. So I think we're all on the outside looking in. We'll have to take the Wall Street Journal's word for it, apparently, here, Darren, that skipping coffee is the latest humble brag.
Okay, well,
Skipping
here's
it like across a river?
You are caffeine free. You are productive. You are professional. You're a go-getter, yet you are caffeine free.
That's me.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah,
so,
I'm not. Yeah, for the most part. Like I don't have coffee on a daily basis. Maybe like certain scenarios if we have a late night here at work and then we have an early morning, or no, we're gonna have a long day. Like, yeah, I'll go stop and get a coffee, but I don't make coffee in my apartment. I don't pick it up every morning. I'm also not the kind of person where I'm like, it's a Saturday, Sunday morning, and it's like, ooh, let's go get a coffee. That's what I want. That's just not me. But like when we've had like early meetings before, like I've grabbed a coffee before, so I'm not like anti-coffee. I'm right, like in the right setting, but I don't have it every day.
See, I didn't even really drink any coffee until I was like 42. And now I'll do some, but like we have like in the office, we have like a upscale coffee machine that gives you coffee drinks besides just regular coffee.
That was a nice way to not say the brand.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Well,
but I can take it or leave it. I don't have to have it every day. How is that a power move?
They start this story by saying that a person's order in the coffee shop can be a kind of personality decoding.
That is overwhelming to
tactic, right? Like black coffee devotees are hardcore, according to this, right? I didn't realize I was so hardcore.
You drink coffee every morning, right?
Well, after 20 years of morning radio, Dani, I had no choice.
Right,
I
so
was
what's your
pretty
order?
much anti-coffee. No, just straight black coffee. I'm not big.
I read an article about a certain chain that sells coffee, and basically saying that was part of the issue now is that there's so many variants that can be ordered and through that and the app that it makes it really tough if you're ordering just black coffee. You're having to wait 5 minutes in line to get a black coffee.
So I went to a certain coffee shop a couple months ago with
this guy. You guys are doing a great job, by the way, of not naming any brands.
Right.
Continue.
I went to this one very popular worldwide coffee shop whose stock I own, and whose stock is down big time in the last 18 months. And I ordered my standard, which is like a medium-sized black coffee. It's around $3. And our final total after he ordered was $18.75. I said,
wait, who are you with?
Just a buddy of mine. I'm like, and it was my turn to buy. And I'm like, what could he have ordered that costs $15 for a single coffee?
3 drinks.
And it had everything in it, including whipped cream and different caramels and chocolates. And
this sounds like a Zach Gershman order.
Okay, so, by the way, it says here
is he
that
in the kind of shape you are, Paul? I mean,
no. Giselle Bundchen starts her mornings with room temperature water with a bit of lemon and Celtic salt.
No, lemon water is supposed to be very good for digestion purposes early in the morning on an empty stomach.
Room temperature water sounds disgusting.
So, Mark Cuban just goes with decaf. He made the transition. Giannis, the basketball superstar, opts for a smoothie. So once again,
that's what I have in the mornings. I have a smoothie.
Are we thinking that those people would be any more less A-lister if they were drinking coffee?
I'm just telling you.
The answer is no.
I'm just telling you, it's a humble brag. Doesn't mean it's valid or warranted or there's any meaning to it whatsoever.
That's me.
Yeah, it's all in the eyes of the beholder. In fact, could I say the same thing?
People got to learn how to humble brag better.
Here comes a segue in 3, 2, 1. Could I say the same thing about an OTA? When we cite that the vibe in an OTA is excellent, that seems to be the general consensus and observation. Is that in the eye of the beholder, or are you truly sensing that, Darren, after 2 decades of OTAs? Do you feel qualified to deem and determine that a vibe is, quote, excellent?
It feels pretty decent, but let's face it, I'm not out there, so I'm going to go by what the players are saying, and it sure feels that way.
Yeah.
But, I mean, OTAs are a lot different than when I first started going out here, Paul. And same thing with you.
Yes.
In fact, I was talking to a person that's covering the Cardinals that did it for a while and then was coming back out, and I had to remind him that there's only one OTA open. He's like, I'll see you this week for all the OTAs. I'm like, no, you'll see me for one of them because there's only one of them that's open, because they used to all be open. But
Doesn't mean the players aren't out there, though, being active.
No, of course.
Just
means that we're not out there getting to see it.
Exactly.
That's why I feel like the vibes are high. To go off our vibe curator, Darren Urban, is, oh, man, that's going to be cut for as soon as those words, as soon as I finish saying that, I know that is going to be clipped out and used in an open for a pregame radio show this year. That's
right.
unfortunate.
Nothing will be as embarrassing as what I put on tape at the end of the Red Sea report earlier
That's true.
today.
I was here. I heard it.
Yeah, that was.
So anyway, the vibes are high
yeah.
because OTAs are still voluntary.
Okay.
And everyone was out there Monday when it was the first practice. It was open to the media.
Almost everyone. There was one or two. They shall name. Oh, Jesus.
There you go, Darren.
Cut all
Put
this
that
out.
in the open.
Get this the hell out of here.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess I.
Nameless. They're going to be nameless.
Okay, well, we did not, I guess,
I
compare
can talk to you off air.
Okay, wow. Okay, anyway, I guess almost everyone was there, and this is still voluntary. And it wasn't long ago when we were sitting in this podcast studio the same time of the year talking about the leaders and the veterans that were not here. Even though it was voluntary, right? They were still not here.
Yep.
And that's not the case. All of the leaders are there. And I think that does say something to the culture of what is not even really what is being built here, what is set in stone at this point in year 2 under Jonathan Gannon. Like the expectation, the standard, like that is all set. The leaders are here. They are setting the standard. They are leading by example. And while you don't get a lot from OTAs, it's phase 3 of the offseason workout. So the players are in helmets, right? They can line up, but there's still no contact. So you're seeing a little bit more. We're getting a better idea of maybe where some players are going to line up or which position group they're likely going to spend most of their time with if they're a player that can move around. So you're still not getting a ton, but in terms of the vibes, for me, I take them as being pretty high just from the attendance that we saw on Monday.
Dare I say that this sort of attendance and buy-in to the offseason, voluntary as it may or may not be, relates back to last season's offseason's theme, and that was the Big Red Purge. Was it not, Darren? Because once again, there are 5 Purge movies: The Purge, The Purge Anarchy, The Purge Election Year, The First Purge, The Forever Purge, and then The Big Red Purge. And I think after that standard was set last offseason, and guys saw all the turnover, how they're willing to go ahead and move on to a brand new starting quarterback less than 2 weeks before week 1, and then making moves away from Isaiah Simmons and Myjai Sanders and Marco Wilson, that a lot of these guys out there are like, okay, what's the one way to motivate in any professional sports league? Job security. And when you have a rookie class of 12 and then 3 fairly highly paid undrafted rookie free agents, notice they went for quality versus quantity. That's another hallmark of Monty Ossenfort, I believe, in the undrafted free agents. And by the way, get some good words on Xavier Weaver for all you Colorado fans out there. And you know who you are, who keep hitting us up for Xavier Weaver coverage, because that kid has a lot of following out of Boulder. I'm just saying, Darren.
You have different Twitter followers than we do, actually.
I didn't see that. All I know is that Danny is freaking out over here because I think at some point Paul actually went and looked at an old bingo card and said, I'm going to hit every single one of those things on the bingo card in the first 10 minutes.
Nice. That's good. I've never seen a bingo card, but I can play to a crowd. I have been known to do that every once in a while, so we'll throw that out there. No, I'm serious. I think that when you see, for example, I'll go next layer. When you see them draft a running back, when James Conner's in the final year of his deal, when they draft a safety, when Budda Baker's in the final year of his deal, when they drafted Paris Johnson Jr. last year, when DJ Humphries was essentially in the final year of his deal. It goes back to what Monty Ossenfort told those rookies at the end of last season. My job as an NFL GM is to replace every one of you, is to continue to evolve and improve this roster. And I think this is a byproduct of that. Plus, this is just me, and this comes back to the vibe, and it's all in the eye of the beholder. I think they saw enough promise at the end of last season that I think there's much more confidence going into this season, and that leads into a belief that, guess what, you can truly compete for a playoff spot this year. And I think just the prospect of being a winning team generates that much more in terms of good vibes and buy-in. That's just me from the outside looking in.
I talked to somebody who sees practice, and obviously this isn't super specific, and it's early in the offseason and everything. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically said this, from what he's seen, this team has a real chance to surprise some people. And I was like, okay. Now, again, we're not watching it. And I'll be frank to everybody, even in the days that I was watching all of these, it didn't mean anything. It never does. I mean, it means something in terms of like, okay, you're working on a little bit of chemistry and everything, but it's the Bruce Arians. They're playing soccer. I mean, they're in shorts. They're not hitting each other. Contact is no good. So, I mean, it's the expectations, what you get out of this right now can only be so much. However, when you talk about, and we keep saying vibes, and we're having some fun with it, but the reality is there is a different feel to what's around here. And it's the same thing we've been talking about for a long time. It's the same thing we were talking about at the end of last year. It just felt like there was just a different feel to what's going on. Now, does it translate? I said this in the mailbag this week. Somebody was complaining, essentially, that, again, the national media doesn't seem to want to look this team's way, and they only got one primetime game. And I'm like, okay, this team won 4 games 2 years ago, right? 3 games 2 years ago.
Yes.
No, 4. It was 4.
4.
Well, 4, yeah.
4. They were picking third. They won 4 games 2 years ago. They won 4 games last year. Yeah, they were closer in some other games. Yeah, they look good down the stretch, but they won 4 games. You're not going to get people's attention after back-to-back 4-win seasons. You're just not. And even the couple of times that I've happened to have face-to-face recently with both Monty Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon, I have been the one who's kind of presenting it to them. The vibes feel good. You guys seem like you're going in a really good direction. Everything seems right. And both of them very specifically say, yeah, but we've got to win games. They have literally said those words to me. So the two most important people understand you're not going to get a lot of recognition. You're not going to get the primetime games until you actually start winning. And they know that that's at the heart of this. The vibes are super awesome, but what does that record look like in the fall?
Yeah, it's a production business, results-oriented business. You know, Diana Taurasi was on Arizona Sports, Cardinals flagship radio station, end of last week, and she was asked about culture. And her definition, leave it to DT to just bottom line it, right? She said, it's not a slogan on a T-shirt culture. It's the people you bring in. It's a byproduct of the people you bring in. So when you get 2 draft classes, when you get certain free agents signed who all bring that same mentality, which I think we all agree is quite different in a lot of regards than the mentality a couple years ago. That's maybe what gives you that good vibe, what starts to give you that belief that things are changing. That and the fact you like to think that you're amping up the level of talent on your roster.
This might be an explanation that only kind of makes sense in my head.
I also want to clip that, Omo. Thank you.
When thinking about OTAs like 2 years ago versus now.
Feels like we need a thought bubble over your head right now.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. That's what I'm feeling at the moment.
Okay.
When players weren't always showing up to the voluntary aspect, right? We understand that. When they did show up, let's say, it kind of felt more like individuals showing up at the same spot at the same time after looking through the same playbook. Now, it feels like a bunch of teammates and members of a team getting out on the field and working through things together. That might not make sense. That might sound cheesy. That is just what I am picking up from the changes. If it doesn't really feel like a bunch of individuals that are here, it really does feel like that team first mentality that we hear Gannon and Ossenfort talk about, of putting the team first and not having an ego. It really does feel like teammates and members of a team rather than a bunch of individuals just showing up at the same time.
Well, and especially in this market where you have a fan base with a lot of crossover with the other local teams, and watching a Phoenix Suns team that did not at all look like they were teammates a lot of the time and fit together. I know this can be a certain amount of catnip for a fan base that's looking for a team like that.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I was trying to make
I appreciate
a comparison to the Suns bringing in Mike Budenholzer to the Cardinals bringing in Jonathan Gannon. And what was the one word that I think both teams shared in making a head coaching move? Accountability, or lack thereof. And my suggestion, my free advice, Calvisi Consulting, the Paulie Roundball division, to the Suns was to have Coach Bud be sure to come in as Bud Heavy and not Bud Light.
Nice, Paul.
Because Jonathan Gannon came in heavy.
That's the one brand of all the opportunities we've had in this podcast. That's the one you're going to name drop. I love it.
Team sponsor, by the way. Bud Heavy is what Jonathan Gannon did.
Yes.
He came in heavy. He needed to come in heavy. And those who weren't on board weren't on board much longer. Literally.
Well, as we all know, and we've been through this, especially you and me, Paul, we've been through this so many times. What happens? You bring in the coach that lets it up a little bit, then you bring in the coach that's a little bit harder. Yeah. And the Suns went from Vogel to Budenholzer, and the Cardinals went from Cliff Kingsbury to Jonathan Gannon. That's how it works.
Yeah. So whereas the attendance technically is voluntary during the OTAs, the mindset is mandatory. Could we say that? Maybe that's the point. That's the vibe I got off your point, your thought bubble there, Danny, if you will, was the mindset and the mentality is completely different out on that field than perhaps 2 years ago.
That's exactly what offensive lineman Will Hernandez said when he talked to the media Monday after practices. A question was posed to him about what did he make of having almost every player out there when it was voluntary, and he joked, he goes, voluntary? This isn't mandatory? And it was that same thought of, okay, sure, it's voluntary, but the mindset is mandatory. And he name dropped some people. He said, if Kyler Murray's out here, Budda Baker's out here, James Conner is out here, yeah, I better be out here.
And again, having been here for many, many years, like the voluntary stuff used to be a lot, but I mean, this is really nothing new. And there's a reason the voluntary stuff comes up is because, you know, I did cover this league in a time frame when it was voluntary and coaches still kind of made comments, you know, if you read between the lines, that they wouldn't be happy if X. I mean, I remember Denny Green being very unhappy with a couple guys that weren't showing up. And for the most part, over the years, it didn't matter who the coach was. The guys show up. Unless there was a contract issue, guys have been here over the years for the most part. They might miss a day or two, but a lot
of guys would show up just ironically enough when the TV cameras were here for media availability.
Possible.
And then maybe not the rest of that week's OTAs. But anyway.
Sometimes. Yeah. That did happen a couple times. But I will say that for the most part, like when I first started covering the team in 2000, 2001, and there might have been some issues with like who the workout, the way they worked out and all that stuff. Maybe there was less, but for the most part over the years, this team does get the turnout. The difference is, of course, what Danny is saying, which is there's a feel there that it's a little bit different.
Can I also venture to say, and if I'm wrong, I know you guys will hold me accountable.
Yes.
But when you have your franchise QB healthy and poised to have not only a full season, but a bounce back season, that generates its own level of belief and buy-in. This time a year ago, you're like, oh, geez, how many games is Kyler going to play? Is he going to miss the first month? Is he going to miss the first 2 months? There are rogue reports out there. They might shut him down for the entire season. Well, if you're a player, you're wondering, what type of season are we going to have if we don't have our franchise quarterback? And every single NFL team can say the same. Without your starting quarterback, what chance do you truly have? So at least this year, you got to tell me there's more wind in the sails of every single player in that locker room, knowing K1 is out there and ready to rock.
Absolutely. I would think that isn't just players. It's probably coaches as well, everybody, to have your franchise quarterback out there. And especially knowing what Kyler is capable of physically, how he sees the game, his skill set, what he's able to do in a short amount of time, right, under pressure. Like, you're right. Having a full offseason and really getting even more comfortable is huge. I think that's going to be, it's going to set this offense up for a really big bounce back, the way you said, and some good success based on just how last season ended.
I mean, just the fact he had the best RVA session that Jonathan Gannon's ever seen, the best routes versus air session that he's ever seen in an offseason practice.
Oh, I thought you said RBF for a minute there, and I had to pause.
Did I say RVA?
No.
I don't. And so, look,
Danny is so tired of me. So tired.
When's your vacation, Darren?
if all the other players out there are witnessing the same thing and thinking, okay, wait a minute, we've got an elite quarterback. He is back. Let's go. We're ready to play. When is that week 1 game again, right? All of a sudden, guys are that much more amped up to start the season. So,
I mean, this is a big offseason for him to learn. I mean, I've said this a lot of times, and Paul, if you want to think back to like 2008, 2009 with the Cardinals, kind of the same with the Arians, but 08, 09 is when I really think of it. You know, this was a team that Wisnut comes in, they go 500 his first year, and then the second year they have the really good start. They clinch the division way early. They tail off. Then they make the Super Bowl run. And then in 2009, they won the division again. They won 10 games. And it was a solid season, but they were coming off the Super Bowl. There was expectations. The ride, the lift up, the getting to 500 in Wisnut's first season when they had struggled to even get there most of the time in Arizona. And then the next year, as bad as the last part of the regular season was that year, the ride to be a division winner, to win early in the season, and then that Super Bowl run, there's something about that first move up the roller coaster.
yep. When it hits, it hits.
And that next year they won more games in the regular season, but it wasn't the same because you were expecting them to win and everything. And right now we're at that very beginning part of the roller coaster going up. And this is the really fun part. This is the anticipation of what's to come. And if everything comes together, this is the most fun. When you, even if, let's just say for argument's sake, they win 8 games this year. Will it be somewhat disappointing because you're expecting them to maybe challenge for the playoffs? Perhaps. But if you win 8 games this year and then you continue to improve your team and you know what's coming next year, this is to me the most fun part to be around a team.
It's funny because we've likened this Cardinals turnaround to the Honolulu blueprint, right? What they've done in Detroit with the Lions. Don't forget, 2 years ago in 22, they started 1-6. And then they ripped off this run at the very end, almost made the playoffs, and then that carried over into last season all the way to the NFC Championship game. They ended up blowing the double-digit lead in the second half against the 49ers. But you had a Lions team that knew things were changing. They had more talent. They had a different mentality. Still, they started 1-6, but then all of a sudden, it just hit, to your point. Sort of like, is this on the bingo card? If I do a stock market comparison,
I don't have a bingo card right
quick?
now, Paul. I need to print more.
Do you know the top 3 companies on the face of the earth?
In terms of what?
It's Apple in terms of size and just market
Google?
cap. It's Apple. It's Microsoft. It used to be Google, and now it's NVIDIA, the semiconductor chip company that's come out of nowhere. When it hits, it hits. And you can be that stock in the NFL. You can be that team in any league that all of a sudden, think of the Suns, Darren. I'm going to go back to old school Suns for just one moment. They were a 60-loss team, and they brought in Steve Nash. And all of a sudden, they were a 60-win team. Like that.
I like how he says
like
old school
that.
with Nash, and that's like the 2000s. I thought he was going
remember
back
Steve
to Paul
Nash when he was a
Westphal.
Mav.
I wasn't going back to Sweet D and Double A and all that like Coach Bud.
Did you
threw
know
out
that
there.
the Suns should have gotten Lou Alcindor, and they lost the coin flip, Paul?
you.
All this Suns talk.
Thank
Are we
you.
going to talk about
Thank
the
you.
Mavs and the Stars?
Nope.
Oh,
No? Okay.
wow. Okay.
This is a no Luka
Yeah.
zone.
Yeah. No, but we are going to talk about the offensive line. Here's my quick little anecdote. For those of you who have yet to consume Big Red Rage, I'm going to give you a quick highlight. We had Christian Jones on this week. And I said, give me a moment. Give me a learning moment as a rookie. Anything happened so far? You know, sort of an early welcome to the NFL moment. He said, oh, yeah, happened earlier today at practice. I got absolutely schooled on a pass rushing move. Just guy blew right past me. I said to myself, I've never seen a move like that in my life. What was that? I got to go back on film and study that. And I said, okay, can you name names? Dennis Gardeck. I said, was it the Gardeck spin move? You know, his patented spin move where it's a spin button? He said, no. He said he did this deal where he kind of gave me his hands, pulled back his hands, and then ripped past me. And he said, as he moved past me, because he got me leaning forward, and then I was done. And as he came back past me, he flashed me a smile. Sort of like, welcome to the NFL, Rook.
Jedi Star Wars move, I think is what Christian Jones called it.
So that was really interesting. But that was my segue into the offensive line because he said, yes, all his eyes have been on. When in doubt, he looks at Paris Johnson Jr. because here's a guy who just made that transition, obviously.
Now he's got to look to the left side.
Yes, indeed.
Because we learned that was something we talked about since last season ended.
Didn't Will say he looks over there longingly with longing eyes every once in a while?
Now they're not next to each other.
Danny was the one who asked Paris about it.
I did.
The day after the season.
I did in the locker room. I'd said, "Are you going to train on both sides if your number is called upon?" Because at that point, I mean, we DJ Humphries had already, tore his ACL, and Paris had said, "I'm going to train both sides this offseason. If that's where my number is called upon, that's where I'll be ready to play." Paris has extensive experience there. His final year at Ohio State, that's where he played. He also has experience inside at guard and on the right side, which is kind of how he ended up at right tackle anyway. However, Gannon announced ahead of Monday's practice that they were going to move Paris over to the left side to be tackle, and Jonah Williams, who they acquired this offseason, is going to be right tackle, which is where he played last year with the Bengals. Jonah, from Cincinnati. Yeah. So that switch is official.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Jonah Williams came into the league as a left tackle, played there for a few years. When they signed Orlando Brown, I believe it was, last year to play the left side, they told Jonah he was moving to the right side. In the moment, Jonah was not a happy camper, but once he got to OTAs and training camp, he had accepted the role of playing on the right side and actually felt a little more comfortable there than he thought he was going to. And if you look at his numbers, and again, you can look at all kinds of numbers, and people have been arguing on my timeline since I tweeted out the news about this change about how Jonah Williams wasn't good on the right side, whatever. You can find the stats that say he actually improved when he moved to the right from the left on a bunch of different metrics. So I think the fact that he is probably comfortable there, I'm fairly certain that they let him know when he signed he was probably going to be playing the right side. And I think this has been in the works for a while. Yeah. And
because right after he was signed, NFL Network reported that Paris Johnson Jr. was going to the left side, and we guessed they got that from Jonah Williams' camp.
Probably. And I would guess that.
You know what? We'll never know because this is not what reality was. I do think based on what, the Cardinals have moved on from DJ Humphries, but based on how his contract was set up, had he not gotten hurt, I still think there was a chance that the Cardinals would have moved on from him and slotted Paris over to the left side. It's pretty clear that when he was drafted last year, the goal was for him to be your long-term blindside tackle and to be the pillar on this offensive line. And the unfortunate business side of this game is that the opportunity presented itself for the Cardinals to kind of seamlessly move him over to the left, and this is the time to do it. He got the experience on the right side. He got through his first year, played every snap on offense. And this is the time where you really make sure going into year 2 where you expect to see a jump of, okay, let's get him in the spot where he's comfortable and let's set him up for long-term success and to be a Cardinal for a very long time.
Remember, he played every single offensive snap a year ago, Paris Johnson Jr. And I asked Christian Jones in the interview for the Big Red Rage, he's the 5th-round rookie tackle who was a 4-year starter at Texas. I said, do you want to hear the list of premier pass rushers that Paris Johnson Jr. faced a year ago? Here we go. Aaron Donald twice, Nick Bosa twice, Montez Sweat twice, T.J. Watt, who had 19 sacks, Trey Hendrickson, who had 17.5, Micah Parsons, Myles Garrett, and it goes on from there. Kayvon Thibodeau, you had Will Anderson Jr., and then you had some interior Pro Bowlers like Justin Madubuike and Jonathan Greenard as an outside guy, Hassan Reddick. So he got more than a rookie indoctrination a year ago playing right tackle. Now it goes over to the left side. And it leaves us with one position on that O-line that is going to be ultra, uber competitive, will it not? I mean, we have like a half dozen dudes who are seemingly theoretically in the mix for left guard.
Well, unlikely going to be Will Hernandez. I did ask him that of the chemistry he built with Paris, if there was a chance that he also moves from right guard to the left side where Hernandez has experience, and he all but said no. He said, I'm at the point in my career where I'm comfortable playing wherever I need to on both sides, but it doesn't seem like that is the plan. So when you look at the depth chart where it stands right now, your options are Elijah Wilkinson, Evan Brown, the Cardinals brought in this offseason, maybe a younger player, right? Like
Isaiah Adams.
Right?
I mean, Tristan Colon
right,
is in there.
Tristan Colon, if they want to move Isaiah Adams inside at guard to start. So you have options. It does seem like, though, I mean, the rest of the O-line is set. Yelda Froholt has experience at guard. That's been made clear. He's going to stay at center this year. So it's really just that one spot, with the exception of maybe a swing tackle, that you're looking at some heavy competition.
I mean, lest we forget Big Mo, Marquise Hayes. So throw that in.
Well, John Gaines was in sweats on Monday, so don't worry. I was looking.
You know what?
Now, look,
every time I mention Big Mo, she throws out John
I feel
Gaines.
like do I need to pick an offensive lineman?
You need to pick up back.
You do. John Gaines, I mean, he tore his ACL in the final preseason game last year, and as a bigger guy, as a lineman, you would expect that would take maybe closer to that year mark recovering from an ACL to kind of hit where you can kind of be full go. And we don't even know the details. I mean, it's possible that they opened up his knee and it was worse than they expected. So instead of a 9-month recovery, it's 12. We don't have those answers. Yeah. So if anyone else was wondering, though, about John Gaines, he was in sweats on Monday. I was looking.
John Gaines, if you're listening, reach out to Danny quickly.
I just want to know where you're going to play. I just want to know how you're feeling, how you're doing.
I mean, or he could be ahead of schedule in their ego lifting, as Yelda Froholt said.
He just looked so good through training camp and the preseason.
By the way, Darren, I had this down. I don't think we got to it last week. Did you not tweet out top 5 rookies with the best chance to start? And in order,
yes. Well, I wrote about it.
Okay.
Yes.
So Marvin Harrison Jr. 1, Max Melton the corner 2, Darius Robinson 3, Isaiah Adams 4, Tip Ryman 5.
Yeah.
Now, at first glance, there's really nothing wrong with that until you really go next level. And dare I say, Marvin Harrison Jr., number 1, absolutely. He's akin to Paris Johnson Jr. He's a day one starter the moment he got drafted. They turned the card in. Number 2, Max Melton. Okay, I'll agree with you on that. They have a need at corner. Number 3, I'm going to throw Isaiah Adams in there. I think he could even be your clubhouse leader at left guard right now. And because I believe Darius Robinson, although worthy based on early returns we're hearing out there, and by the way, Christian Jones did say Darius Robinson was by far the best D lineman at the Senior Bowl. Let that hang in the air for just a moment. I do believe that the 2 veteran guys, highly paid guys, Justin Jones and Bilal Nichols, will be your starters. So just based on that.
Wait, so you're saying there's only going to be 2 of them?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's going to be to at least start the first depth chart. So I'm going to move Darius Robinson out of my top 5, and I'm going to throw Rabbit in there at 4 in case he has a shot at maybe nickel corner. And then I'm going to go off the board for Xavier Thomas and Elijah Jones in a tie for 5th, guys who might threaten to be starters as
So you don't
rookies.
think Tip Ryman?
Hang on. Well, before we get to that, are you saying your starting cornerbacks are going to be Elijah Jones and Max Melton, not Sean Murphy-Bunting?
Sean Murphy-Bunting and Elijah Jones. Maybe. Behind Max Melton in terms of probability, but I'm throwing him in there.
I want to back up a minute. So what is your... The Cardinals are playing the Bills. The Bills come out their first their first whatever the season, first play of the season.
Yeah.
3 wide.
Yeah.
What do the front 7 look like?
Front 7, I would say you have, and here we go. I would say you have the two outside linebackers will be
names.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I'm just saying.
Zaven Collins, B.J. Ojulari.
Okay, that's 2.
Okay. Kaiser White, Mac Wilson.
Okay.
Bilal Nichols, Justin Jones.
Okay.
And then from there, it depends on what Nick Rawls is dialing up.
See, I feel like he's trying to avoid saying Darius Robinson so he doesn't have to say he's starting.
Are you going with another down lineman?
I'm asking you, Paul, who are you going with? Who's out there?
If you're going 3 wide, I'd say there's another backer out there. That would be my question.
So who is it?
At this point, where is my list of backers exactly? And I can go through that depth chart.
Well, is it Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson to start?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, yeah, you could end up with a nickel or a dime in that situation easy in terms of the secondary. So that's, it's fluid, as we found out from Nick Rawls.
We got no answers from you, Paul.
That's all I'm throwing out there.
You just wanted to throw me under the bus is what he wanted.
By the way, speaking of Tip Ryman, I have to call something up. Danny, I showed this to Darren earlier. It's a conspiracy theory that hopefully I didn't X out of. Hey, do you remember Jeff Driscoll by chance?
Of course I do.
Okay.
How could I forget?
Okay. And then when Tip Ryman was drafted, I found myself saying, you know what? Where have I seen this guy?
Wait, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a text?
Screenshotting it and having it as a photo, Paul.
You're right. I should be sharing it with
everybody.
everybody.
Photos or
This
text
is
right
bad.
now?
I know.
You do need a new phone.
We'll see if we can. I should have had this loaded into the system. Look at the photos and the comparisons. Jeff Driscoll.
Let me look through all the cracks on your
and
phone
Tip
screen.
Ryman. That phone's going to be replaced next month.
Whoa. Can I show this to the camera?
Jeff Driscoll
do it.
and Tip Ryman. I don't know if you can zoom in on that exactly.
Just get closer.
My question is, Jeff Driscoll.
It's not me. It's just the camera has to take it.
Yeah, except nobody's paying attention. Oh, there we go.
Driscoll, who went away.
Not so close on my face.
Oh, my God. That was so like.
That was sort of a Vanna White moment. You know, holding that up there.
See, if I had time, what I would prefer to do is have a big picture of Tip Ryman and then a big picture of Chad Burns, and say
our team illustrator,
our team artist, who also looks like the younger, older, less chiseled Tip Ryman.
Yeah, Tip just looks like a bulkier version.
And that was my question. Did Jeff Driscoll go away and put on 30 pounds and come back as Tip Ryman? That's what I want to know.
I wouldn't ask that.
I wouldn't ask that. I know the box score indicates that he left the Cardinals at the very end of last season and started the final game of the year for Cleveland.
Yes.
But and then Darren.
Although Paul didn't realize. Yeah.
Darren, go ahead, Darren. And then the plot thickens when Darren offered this up.
That Jeff Driscoll played tight end in the NFL for a little while with the Texans.
Aha. There you go. I was not even aware of that.
And then went back to quarterback.
This is a new conspiracy theory, and I love that for you.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll get a Reddit thread.
Apparently, Aaron Rodgers met the media earlier today. So, from one Cal guy to another, I'm going to throw out another conspiracy theory. How about that? I'll throw that out there. By the way, Aaron Rodgers.
Be bragging about that.
Aaron Rodgers vowed that he's no more distractions between now and the rest of the football season.
He's going into another silent room.
To which the lie
I did
detector
love that
went
the
off.
Chargers, they don't even play the Jets, and they still took some jabs at Aaron Rodgers in their schedule release video.
They took a jab at everybody, didn't they?
Right, but they don't even play the Jets.
Should I ask?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I never really saw the full thing where the Chargers put out. What sort of jab did they take against their Week 7 opponent, the Cardinals? Do we mention that, or are we moving on from that?
Yes, they actually had it was an animated meme, the famous meme with the Grim Reaper with the multiple doors.
It was all based off Sims, the computer game.
Okay.
And then the door, the middle door that death was coming out of was the post that we had of Josh Rosen quoting Cliff Kingsbury, "He's our guy." And then it was going into a door
5 years ago.
It was going into a door that had the Kyler Murray social post about he's our QB1. And if you look far enough to the left, props to them, because this is going away. And the Easter eggs the Chargers do is quite impressive. The door on the far left had our Chicago Bean win post.
I see. So basically,
props to them.
Their game plan is don't let any other team live down any moment in their team history.
That's their brand. That's their social brand.
Okay. I got you.
That will not be our social brand. Just so everybody can spread that out. That will not be our social brand.
We feel better about our own 5-win season by poking fun at everyone else. That's basically the mantra, if I understand that correctly. And I haven't really seen them year to year, but I'm just okay.
It's all about trying to decide what you want to do. There are different ways you can leverage your brand, and there's no question that around schedule release time, the Chargers are the most talked about team. Okay. So,
all right, it was getting some talk out on the field. There's another segue, bringing it back to OTAs. BJ Ojulari.
And what number?
Darren, you did the story on azcardinals.com.
I did. Well, I think everybody knows by now he's wearing 9 because Marvin Harrison is wearing his 18, and I got a chance to talk to him last week, and he insists there was no transaction, that there was just a conversation.
All right.
Really nice of him to defend his teammate like that.
And they chopped it up, and the decision was made to let Marvin have 18.
Does that mean it was a lot of money?
I don't know. It's
I asked him directly. I said, I'm not looking for details, but I said, was there a transaction involved? And he said, no. We just talked about it.
Did you pull around Wolfley and ask him his weight? Has he put on weight in the offseason?
He looks like he's put on weight.
He does look like it.
He looks incredible, like an incredible. And half of our conversation was about the uniform number, of course, because 18 was important to him, and he picked it very specifically when he came out. So a lot of people were surprised he was willing to give it up. But
because at LSU, you have to earn it, and there's a lot of prestige that goes along
you're
with 18.
Essentially, to be able to wear 18 in college at LSU, you're deemed like the epitome of what it means to be an LSU football player. So it means a lot to him. But we also talked about how big this second year is, and the reality is they need him. They didn't sign an edge rusher. They drafted one edge rusher, and it was in the 5th round in Xavier Thomas. So I think that puts a lot directly on the back of B.J. Ojulari to be that guy. Now, he's like, I want to be all around. I know everybody talks about sacks, and that's what gets you paid and gets you recognition. But he goes, I want to be that guy when the other team's looking at me saying, I don't know if he's going to rush. I don't know if he's going to drop into coverage. I don't know what he's going to do. He goes, I want to be that guy. And I think it's interesting. And I've always liked BJ. I think he's incredibly intelligent. He talked about how he's getting more outspoken with the team. And I think he definitely struck me last year as a person when I talked to him as one of those rookies that came in, wanted to do a lot of be seen, not heard.
Yep.
And he's getting a little bit better about it. I think he can be more of a personality than he has shown because he's getting more comfortable. And I do think he's going to be incredibly important to this pass rush in this front seven.
Again, they have capital invested. He's a high second-round pick. Zaven Collins, 16th pick overall. So, and then you bring in Dennis Gardeck and Xavier Thomas and some other guys off the edge. So that combined with the fact that you bolstered the interior D-line. We talked about that last week, what Kyle Vandenbosch said. The only 3 times he went to a Pro Bowl is when he had a Pro Bowl defensive lineman next to him. So if you were to build up and bolster the defensive line room like the Cardinals did, then okay, how does that trickle and apply to the edge guys?
Immediately. This is going to be a big year for that room in terms of long-term decisions that are going to be made this time next year by the front office. You have strengthened your D-line. So if you've got more pressure, right, that's going to allow your edge rushers to kind of get off a little quicker, and also focusing on the backside of the defense, the DB's room, the way that this team has, okay, going to force the quarterback to maybe hang on to the ball a little more. Mm-hmm. All those decisions are setting up a pass rush room for success. Now, this is a big year. I mean, B.J. Ojulari is going into year 2. Zaven Collins is essentially going into year 2 as well, after making the move to full-time outside last year. So this is for those two specifically, but then also the room as a whole, as decisions are going to be made. Their play is going to be incredibly important. Zaven Collins' 5th-year option was not picked up, right? So he needs to have a great year in order to get a contract to play here this time next offseason. B.J. Ojulari, there's a big expectation that you make a big jump going into year 2. It's his first time having a full offseason. So the moves that this front office has made on the defense sets up this pass rush group to have success, to show what you're capable of, and kind of make decisions from there. But it's an immediate trickle-down effect from addressing the cornerbacks room as heavily as they did in the draft and adding in Sean Murphy-Bunting in the offseason, and all the moves they did on the D-line.
Yeah, Zaven Collins, another guy, you watch him out there and you're like, all right, what's in store? And then you realize just in hearing from all the coaches, including JG at the owners' meetings at the breakfast, and you hear from some of the position coaches, I almost liken what Zaven Collins needs to do this year to what Gronk heard at the Tom Brady roast. All the jokes about him being a caveman, a Neanderthal, me Gronk, those kind of. Zaven needs to just dumb it down. He's so smart. He played Mike linebacker the year before. He thinks about it at such a great level. Just think less, savage more. Just go ahead. You're 6'5", 260 plus, and you can move. Just go out there and just wreak some havoc instead of thinking so much through it. That's my translation as to what the coaches are telling him this offseason. And then we'll find out whether actually, parlays into sacks and getting to the quarterback.
I like that motto, think less, savage more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is good. I think I'm trying not to give Paul too much credit.
I'll give him credit.
I know you will.
Backhand.
I will.
It's obligatory. Go ahead.
I do think the Zaven Collins thing always it's an interesting thing because you talked about earlier about bringing in the guys that create the culture. Like it's not just, but it's about the people. I think Zaven Collins is absolutely one of those people.
Mm-hmm.
But just because you bring in the right people doesn't mean they can play. And I'm not trying to say Zaven Collins can't play, but like you have to play at a certain level to maintain your spot. No matter what, even if you're the perfect person for the culture, you still got to be able to do stuff on the field to like make it work. Yeah. So that'll be an interesting thing how we do it this year, how it comes out.
Yeah. I mean, when we were talking to Christian Jones, you just said there seems to be a type that they're gunning for with every offensive lineman they bring in. Big man's game, mauler, athletic. Those are like the three key words that are in every single offensive lineman's scouting report, seemingly, that they either draft or they bring in. And I just asked him, okay, do you resemble those remarks, Christian? You know, he talked about, okay, how he was at a certain point of his career at Texas, and he just reveres the O-line coach at Texas. And he sat him down after, I think, his first year as a starter, said, you're a big man who doesn't play big enough, meaning you need to get nasty. You need to impose your physicality on people more. Excellent footwork, former soccer player, we get it. Now you need to get dirty. You need to muck it up. You know, think less, savage more, whatever you want to go. And so Christian Jones said, yeah, that was a big turning point in my career as a college offensive lineman. I think I still have upside in that department, et cetera, et cetera. But once again, to Darren's point, Zaven Collins checks every one of those boxes except maybe that last part of that equation. And does he have the ability to show that? Now, when he was a starting Mike linebacker, he was more than physical enough. But, okay, now, off the edge, it's a different game. What's interesting is I vividly remember Dennis Gardeck saying this time last year about how it would be a much easier position for Zaven to play because there's so much less to think about. When you're the Mike linebacker, you're calling the defense, you're calling the checks, any other sort of adjustments you're making to an offense that's audibling. You got to worry communicating to all three levels of the defense at times. Heck, you're off the edge, and it's just, okay, is the play coming at me or is the game going away from me?
I don't know, Paul. You're one of those people that overthinks things all the time. I mean, you should be able to understand that nothing's quite that simple.
One of the few things I can relate to in the NFL. Is that what you're saying? Okay. So there's that.
You said it, not me.
Okay. Anything else or anyone else stand out?
Yeah. See number 4 out there?
That
made me do
Danny
double
and I were
take.
talking about that the other day.
Because it's Greg Dortch now, so it looks a lot like Rondale.
Yeah.
Not Rondale Moore.
Same height, just about. And, yeah. We'll see who's going to screw that up more on the air. How many play-by-play guys, namely me, are going to mess that up in August.
I did see the NFL is talking. We didn't get to go to Brazil this year, guys.
Okay. Yeah.
Or London. But the NFL has obviously been looking at other places. There's been talk of a game in China. There's been talk of a game, I think somewhere else. I'm trying to remember.
Australia?
Well, that's where I was going to go. Australia, like they're now talking about Australia.
We talked about Dublin last week. Dublin.
And I think, So, but I know that like the Australian one would be incredibly difficult logistically because of how far away it is from everybody. So I don't know how easily that would be done. And I'll be honest, I don't know if I want to go to Australia if I'm a team. Like, hey, have you seen some of those videos on YouTube of like some of the critters that live out in Australia?
Like snakes?
Kangaroos? What do you mean?
Oh, they're like giant bugs and spiders. Like, look it up sometime. Like,
wow. Yeah, but I get scared living in Arizona that I'm gonna like walk out and step on a rattlesnake.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Go to YouTube and like Google like Australian critters or whatever, and you won't want to go there. I don't think I want to do that.
Well, we're not going to Australia, but where are we going, Paul? You've been asking Darren and myself where we're going for preseason. For joint practices.
Oh, that's true.
Oh, that's the segue.
Now you know.
She's professional there.
I segued you.
If only we were going to Indianapolis, the home of the Motor Speedway, the Brickyard, this weekend for the 500. Alas, we're going to go in August for a joint practice.
Woohoo!
So
now Darren and I don't have to smile and be awkward when you ask us anymore.
That's right.
That's a good point.
Why? Once again, always the last to know. So anyway, okay, Indianapolis, thoughts, reactions. It's going to lead up to this second preseason game instead of after the second preseason game, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So the Cardinals host the Saints for that first game, then likely go to Indy, play the Colts, I would assume come home, and then you play the Broncos.
Yeah, at Denver.
And in Denver.
Yeah. And see, it's vital for like the head coaches to have that relationship. So if things start to get a little chippy, things start to get a little too competitive, the two coaches can huddle up and go, okay, right? And they can come to a meeting of the minds because they're on the same page. And They have a history together. So and
Gannon has that with Shane Steichen.
Yeah.
They were in Philly together, the Colts head coach.
And then you realize how influential his days as a Colts assistant coach was to him. Like doing his TV show, like he would talk about that a lot. When the Cardinals went to play Chicago in his days under Matt Eberflus, in the respect he has for Flus or whatever they call him. And so, I mean,
whatever they call him.
That goes back to the Colts days. And then Chris Ballard, he has a close relationship with the Colts GM. So, all right.
See, I like a couple weeks ago when it was asked to
Actually,
JG.
It was flu is what it was. Go ahead.
In one of JG's pressers a couple weeks ago, and someone had asked if it was official, and he made a comment and said, I'm 99% sure, which means I'm not positive. And I learned that from Frank Reich of unless you're 100% positive. And I was like, was that a hint?
Yeah. So the good news is there's no way the heat and humidity index can be nearly as severe as Minnesota last year, right? ... So we have that to look forward to. No matter how humid it might be.
Might be a tornado.
It will never reach the heat index that we saw in Minneapolis last year.
That was brutal.
It was
just
I mean,
brutal.
Bring your bucket hat, Paul.
I love how Wolf went. Remember Wolf? Didn't bring a hat.
Yeah, that's right.
Didn't bring a hat.
So he had to buy a Vikings hat.
They obviously didn't have anything non-Vikings branded. I think he got tape or something.
Yeah, he did.
To
he covered it.
He got tape after he got taken because he paid more than $50 for a bucket hat at the Vikings merchandise stand.
And what I think happened is we got there early, and then as practice was starting, the equipment guys, I think, got him a Cardinals hat,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So.
The equipment guys are literally like, Wolf, what are you doing? Just ask us for a hat. Why did you go spend $50 on the opposing team's bucket hat that you're now trying to convert into a neutral bucket hat?
Now, I will say one of the cool parts about the Viking trip was our hotel was literally within walking distance of the practice facility. I do not think we're going to have that option this year, but
I've never been to the Colts practice facility. I've only ever been to Indianapolis for the combine and then one other time in the winter. So I've never even been there in August. I hope it's not too humid.
So I have the two of you down for the walking tour of the Brickyard. We're going to go check out the Indianapolis 500, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It's a 2.5-mile oval, so bring your walking shoes. You guys want to do that in the middle of the afternoon heat? You going to join me for that?
I might have plans.
Oh, no.
I will keep you posted.
No. Okay.
Darren, I think you're free, though.
Yeah. That's good.
Thanks, Danny.
That's good.
I think you're busy.
That's good. Darren, I'll put you down.
Oh, boy.
And that'll do it for this edition of Cardinals Underground, brought to you by Pacific Office Automation.
Single game tickets for the Arizona Cardinals 2024 season are on sale now. Purchase your tickets and protect the nest as the Cardinals take on the Bears, Chargers, Commanders, Jets, Patriots, and our NFC West rivals 49ers, Rams, and Seahawks. Secure your tickets now at azcardinals.com/tickets.